Don't get me wrong, I like the car. High performance, aluminum skin, aluminum chassis, more power to weight ratio than any other engine they've ever put out. I really like the car. There's only one problem. The door handles keep breaking. I'm on my second one now, and it's frustrating. As you see, it's usually not a problem with the front anchor points so much as the two rear anchor points that keep breaking. It's the plastic housing around the nuts. We'll begin by disassembling the inner door panel. The only visible screw is the one on the rear of the panel. The others are hidden by various plates and such. The easy way to get this off is with a pair of small needle nose pliers. Inside there's a screw. Once that panel comes off, you'll expose two 7mm bolts. Those are the last two bolts that are holding this panel on. The rest of the panel is being held on by a bunch of spring points at various intervals. You'll just have to kind of wedge your hands in there and pop them off one by one. It shouldn't hurt anything, but make sure to take care while getting the lock mechanism free, and make sure not to bend that or tear it off. The two rear mounting bolts, I've already here removed them. You only see the holes, are fairly easy to get to. The one in the front, however, is a little harder to see. I've got it here. It's up front there of that large access hole. Once the handle is free, you'll notice that it catches on the front. This is because there's one last little spring clip that's being held. It's plastic, so don't pull too hard. What you're going to want to do is go into the front and with the screwdriver and see if you can pop it free. If you can't get it from this angle, then sometimes you can get it from the outside with a small screwdriver, and it should just come right off after that. As we see here, everything should be free, and it's going to just pop right out of there. And you're going to notice that the mechanisms that are holding on here, you're going to have to kind of twist and pull that off to get the door handle free. And once you get it back to the bench, then the problem becomes apparent. There's your problem. What you see is it's basically just a little bit of plastic holding these things in the first place. There's not a substantial system holding this stuff together. If you look at the front, there's a bunch of spars holding that nut in. That's why that one doesn't seem to break very often. It's these two rear studs that are always coming apart. What you're going to need to do is go ahead and clean these nuts up and get all the manufacturer's plastic off of there. We're going to replace this housing plastic with another product later. I'll go into more depth. But how I've just gotten this off is with a pair of channel locks or pliers or whatever, and once you crack it, it tends to just come off in chunks. This is likely what happens when you're yanking on the door handle. Once you get that free, you're going to want to go actually in the housing of the door handle and clean that up as well. I just want to take a moment and tell you about the products that I'm using to repair this with. I'm using Instamorph. It goes by a number of different names: Friendly Plastic, Shape Lock. It's a bunch of different names, but it's pretty much all the same stuff. The kind I use is called Instamorph. You heat it to approximately 160 degrees, and it becomes moldable, much like putty, or like comes to the consistency, I'd say, of silly putty. As you see, it comes in these pellets. I've reused some of it, so I've chopped it back up. It's always remoldable. You just heat it back up, it becomes pliable again. You can reuse it over and over and over again. Hopefully, this repair will be very permanent, as opposed to the garbage plastic that the handles are originally made from. Here, I'm just using a little teapot to heat the water up. I'm getting it somewhere in the neighborhood of 180 degrees probably. The plastic quickly turns clear. That's how you know it's able to be used. The smaller the piece, the quicker the turn. If you look at the consistency right now, it's going from kind of a frosted look, and it's going into more of a clear, translucent plastic. As you see, I can pull it right out of the water and start molding it. It was a little warm, but it wasn't horrible. As you see, it's pretty clear. This is how you know it's right in that butter zone, as it were. It's very pliable. You can use it for an assortment of different repairs around the house. The product, I got it from Amazon. It was about $16 to $20, I think, for that little container, and I've been using it for probably 2 years now, because I keep reusing it. So I'll repair something or whatever and keep reusing it. So it's very handy stuff to have around the house. Here you'll see I'm doing a bolt. I'm actually kind of priming the bolt a little bit. I'm putting a little bit of the Instamorph around it to lock into those threads. One thing I did here is it's showing that I'm doing it with the flange out. After getting it all in there, I found that it probably would work better if I turned the nut around. So I actually put the flange part going forward down at the bottom. The larger part of the flange should probably be at the bottom, it occurred to me, because, well, it would be that much harder to pull out and pull back through the plastic. So after cleaning those nuts up, make sure to just put that bottom part, the wide part, at the bottom of the assembly. Now, as you work with the stuff, yeah, sometimes it gets a little bit, it starts to turn a little opaque, and you have to rewarm it. That's not a problem. You just throw it back in the water for a little bit. It becomes a little bit more pliable. And what I'm doing here is I'm just stuffing it down alongside those nuts with a bamboo skewer, a chopstick actually. This also helps me line up the holes, because what's left in that handle are the remnants of the assembly process, and so you can take your notes off of those holes. You're just going to keep working the product into the crevices, trying to essentially make that into one solid piece. If it starts to harden on you, just throw the whole handle in there. It'll take just a few minutes, and it'll start to soften up again. As you see, it's still translucent here. That means that it's workable. Essentially, you can tell by the color. You can kind of tell by the temperature too as you're touching it. Now, as you see here, I've just about finished. I've completely packed it all the way around with the plastic. Here it's cured. So I'm taking this, and you can see it's hardened. It's a very stiff plastic. It's kind of it has almost a rubbery, slippery feel to it. It's like a high molecular density plastic, if you've ever messed with that with woodworking or anything. And it seems to be fairly robust. The only thing I'm worried about is summertime, to see if it remelts during summertime, but I don't think it will, because it's about 160 degrees. So we're ready to go ahead and reassemble. You'll see that we'll throw the handle back on here, clip that in the front, push it in the back. You're going to go ahead and put the nuts in through those holes that you pulled them out of before. You're going to go ahead and button up your sheet here that helps for soundproofing, weatherproofing, that sort of thing. I had to get in there because I dropped the bolts. So we'll put that back, and then we'll go ahead and try and button this back up. As you see, I'm making sure to put the cables back. There was a cable support that I had pulled off. You can go ahead and push those spring clips back into place. Make sure to, again, watch the locking mechanism. Verify the bead along the edge. Just make sure everything's seated correctly. You don't want any water or anything to get in there. You're going to go ahead and put the front handle back on. There's a screw up front. There's the two screws at the bottom, hidden by that spring release panel. You'll see those two screws go in just a second. We're almost done. All in all, this took me, I think, on the order of 2 hours of real work. Obviously, I had to stop and get different shots and everything as I was taking this video. But I'd say, you know, with if I had this video to watch and then perform the action afterward, it would have taken me significantly less time. Now that was also with all the molding and everything else and repair of the actual product. Here, this, you know, kind of snaps back on, but you have to beat it a little bit to get it in there. That's okay. And as we see here, the handle is properly operational. Thank you for watching, and hopefully this video was very helpful to you. If you liked it, hit the like button, or leave a comment